Left 4 Dead 2 has one of the most extensive custom mapping communities out there. Cityscapes, forests, military outposts, secret labs, outer space, and even Bowser's Castle. If there's a setting you want to play in, you'll find it. You want mountains? You've got Death Mountain, Devil Mountain, Journey to Splash Mountain. You even have mountains for people who hate mountains. You've got a ton of options. But finding a good map, that's a challenge. Just because something is highly rated in the workshop doesn't mean it's actually fun to play. My mountain has a 4 out of 5. A 4 out of 5. You know what, let's not dwell on that. Instead, let's look at a map that I really like. This is Lockdown DLC by Alexander Regbert, a 5-chapter campaign set in a soon-to-be-destroyed city. This campaign has a ton of scripted events and storytelling, so let's go through it chapter by chapter. Also, I went through this with both vanilla and the Total Apocalypse mod, so I'll be cutting between the two runs. This is really only a problem with one particular spot, but we'll get to that. Chapter 1 starts off right in the middle of things. The city is being bombed and you're locked in the garage of a burning house. While everyone else is loading up and dying from smoke inhalation, Ellis is busy swooning. There's actually a pretty extensive dialogue set here, where each of the survivors pipes up with their opinions. Now, this isn't exactly something rare. There are tons of mods that have starting dialogue that helps push the player in the general direction of their goal, but this isn't a one-off occurrence. This campaign is loaded with tons of scripted dialogue triggers. Safe rooms, set pieces, and even just arriving at a new location will often trigger a conversation between the survivors. There are hours of recorded dialogue of the survivors in the base game, and this mod is letting none of that go to waste. Anyway, you fight your way out of the burning building. The fire is quickly spreading and everything is exploding. The Air Force is also sitting in bombs, so that isn't exactly helping either. After a quick rumble through some back rooms, you find yourself on Main Street near the evacuation. You see that little blue dot down there? That's Bill. That was Bill. Like I said, the Air Force isn't helping. This triggers a crescendo event where a ton of enemies spawn in from the hillside and behind you. If you can squeeze by, there's actually a minigun that can make short work of the horde just around this corner. With the evacuation now more of an excavation, there's no other place to head than into the sewers. But before you do that, there is a secret supply room over here. If you duck under this and climb this scaffolding, you can find a room which has a nice loadout starter kit. Someone gets an AK and everyone else can trade in their tier 1 weapons for tier 3. Not sure if that's the best decision, but it worked well enough for me. But back to the sewers, there are actually some sort of high-tech maintenance tunnels, or maybe a secret military outpost. Can you tell what this is? I'm not really sure, and we don't stay here too long, but this is definitely not just a regular sewer. These tunnels are extremely cramped, and the rooms are chock full of commons. If you can get past the 800 enemies in this tunnel, you'll finally hit the first safe room. Chapter 2 is where it set in for me that these maps have had a ton of work put into them. Many Left 4 Dead maps are static. If you take away the infected, the whole world will just look frozen in time. This map, the author has spent a lot of time to make the world feel alive. Lights are flickering, steam is spraying from damaged pipes, there's a distant sound of bombers followed by tremors. This world is living and breathing. Each room has had care and effort put into it that make them feel like a real place. A real place in Bizarro World, that is. Because again, this is not the sewers, but still. This is short-lived anyway, as you quickly find your way outside and run into what's left of the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors. They're up on a nearby roof arguing until your group butts in and asks where they're going. They're headed to the roof of the Mercy Hospital and you're headed to the mall to find Sita. This is the same place. Alright, I know that's a little confusing. There isn't a mall in the first game and there's not a hospital in the second, so there really isn't any dialogue that ties both groups together. Well, I guess they could meet up in the sewers, but first that would require these to be real sewers, and also that'd be a weird place to have an evac. Though, based on Chapter 3, maybe that's not so out of the question. But what this basically means is that all the survivors are headed to the same place, so we'll see them right down the road.
Right down the road. Right down the road. Guess we'll see you there. Yep.
I like this scene. It's a nice little break from the chaos of Chapter 1, and reorients you to a new goal. While you're staying around, you don't have to worry about zombies since the original survivors will cover you, and Zoe is an absolute menace with that handgun. And frankly, I just like the dialogue in this game. It's usually so rare and drowned out by gunfire, you really don't hear much of it. Also, you can just skip this entirely on repeat playthroughs. The game doesn't take your control away or lock you in a box until everyone's done talking, you can totally just walk right on by. The rest of this chapter is a hodgepodge of different locations. You head out and quickly find yourself in a hotel, only to climb through a back window into a small industrial area with grain silos, which is directly connected to a crazy prepper cabin. You might be noticing a theme here. We have very distinct and real locations all located in improbable places. You basically don't even notice you moved from one set piece to the next until you stop and look around. This prepper cabin is your first manual crescendo with a classic gas tank barricade. There's plenty of ammo and supplies around, which is pretty much true for the whole campaign. Ammo and guns are plentiful enough that you'll never seriously be stressed for bullets, and any crescendo events supply the team with medkits and throwables. You'll also find plenty of tier 3 weapons scattered around in case that's your thing. Right as you finish off the horde, the Air Force is back to help again. They airstrike a nearby hillside and trigger the first tank of the campaign. That's one of the more divisive aspects of this campaign. People tend to rag on Coldstream, and for good reason, but one of the complaints is that there's a static tank spawn in Chapter 4. This scene always plays out the same, and a lot of people find it boring. And if you're one of those people, I've got bad news, because every tank in this mod is scripted. Now, I guess I don't have proof, I didn't decompile this map to double check, but the only tanks I've ever seen all appear during scripted events. Chapter 2 and 3 have one tank, while chapters 4 and 5 have 2. I'm fine either way, so it's really up to you if you could stomach it. But that's more or less it for Chapter 2. After the tank is down, there's a not-so-safe room to see, but other than that, it's just a quick jog to the real safe room. Chapter 3 is my favorite chapter in Lockdown. It's a prime example of weird level design that still works somehow. This level takes place in one building. That building, in ascending order, consists of a warehouse, a shopping mall, a sewer system, and then a hospital rooftop, complete with a wacky crane and incinerator pit. I don't know how all of this fits together. You climb through one vent, which is where I hear they keep all the good stuff.
One thing video games have taught me, good shit always comes in vents.
And you find yourself in another plane of existence. It never gets boring, that's for sure, and it's not like I'm going through the 18th dull blue forest in a row, but I can see how it could be off-putting. If you're looking for ultra-realistic, you probably won't find it here. Well, actually you kinda do. Despite how erratic the areas are, they're all very intricately designed. The author didn't throw in one shelf with some cereal and call it a supermarket. The prepper cabin, the maintenance tunnels, the diner, even the burning building you start in all have a ton of attention to detail. And that's without making the levels a nightmare to move through. Making a level pretty and making a level fun to play through are two different beasts. Getting both of them to work in tandem can be quite hard. To not go into too much of a tangent, one of the biggest pet peeves I have is getting stuck on things. A lot of the time, mod authors will pretty up a room with tons of items, but then will forget to turn off collision on something. Which means that while you're desperately trying to fight off a tank, you're tripping over potted plants and bottles of milk. Take our boy Lewis here. He's surrounded by a big box that acts as his movement collision. So long as his box overlaps with another, he can't move in that direction, and that's why you can stand on the very edge of a ledge with just your toes. Think of any time you've been playing a custom map and have had difficulty getting inside of a hole or a vent or something. If the opening is just wide enough for the player, you have to line it up perfectly, which ends up being very fidgety. You'll see this with random pipes or pieces of wood, staircases, railings, just random objects you'll climb over. Which is why experienced mappers will take this pile of junk and put an invisible ramp the player actually interacts with. It's a way to keep the level design intricate while retaining its smoothness. Which, if we can finally get back to my original point, is that Lockdown has managed to strike this balance. Even with how cluttered and messy every chapter is, I never got stuck on anything. Okay, tangent over. Where were we? Oh yeah, we're still in the safe room. So like I mentioned earlier, the goal of this chapter is to reach the roof of the hospital, which is in this mall for some reason. You start off by going through some warehouses and offices, until you find out that it's International Clown Week. Carnival music is blaring from 3 speakers and you have to do a rush crescendo to shut them all off. You'll pass through a security office as well as a tattoo parlor and a fireworks store, and I would highly recommend not using a shotgun for this. No real reason why. So after restarting the chapter and using a different gun this time, you climb into some vents and find yourself in a giant sewer system. Now, it should be noted you're probably 2 or 3 stories up at this point. Not exactly the ideal place for a sewer system, at least to me. I'm not an architectural engineer. It's gonna get even more confusing when you leave these sewers and find yourself on the roof of the hospital. A roof that has a giant flaming pit, by the way. Yeah, no, it's weird. You don't actually get to go inside the mall or the hospital. You see the boarded up entrance to the latter, and most of what you get from the mall is just a few stores. But you're high up in the sky now, and Lewis is there with a helicopter. And the military is back, and they're here to help because they shoot down the helicopter right out of the sky. But at least Lewis is a good sport about it. From here, you start another crescendo event that brings another horde and a tank. This tank doesn't always appear. Lewis screams about a tank every time, but I've had a handful of runs where the tank just never shows up. Maybe he falls in a pit and I've never noticed. I'm not really sure. This is a pretty fun fight though. There's plenty of different spots to hold out, and the arena is just big enough to kite the tank. But once that's over, you gotta walk down 5 flights of stairs to get to street level and the next safe room. Chapter 4 is unique in that there's 2 versions of it. There's a dark and stormy night, and a slightly less dark and stormy night. The main difference here is that the night version seems to have a fog effect throughout the level. I never really noticed, to be honest, and looking at the footage now, it's not too different. This is the most open level, with a medium-sized starting zone and a couple of side areas to explore. There's a couple stores, a gun shop, a small office, but you don't really need to go into any of them. Instead, you climb the scaffolding, fight off a horde, and run into Zoe just outside of the subway. She points you toward the generators and mentions that they'll summon another horde. But before you can fix the second generator, the office building she's hiding in explodes and 2 tanks burst out. There's a mounted minigun and plenty of room to run around, so you'll be fine as so long as you don't back yourself into a corner. Fixing the other generator does summon a horde, but the subway entrance is such a choke point that it's really not an issue. And once you're in the subway, the safe room is just around the corner. Chapter 4 is pretty short, and if you ignored all the side areas, you could probably finish it in under 10, maybe even 5 if you're lucky. Chapter 5 makes up for that in being about the same length, but much harder. There's a short stint in an actually logically placed sewer, and then you'll find yourself at the finale. How you will go through this will greatly depend on if you're playing with bots or a team. It's a lot like the Parish finale. You need to run through this congested tunnel with an endless stream of zombies pouring in from the other side. If you have coordination and some good throwables, getting through this tunnel can be a piece of cake. But solo, you better pray you don't get all Molotovs. The zombies streaming in from the other end is endless and includes specials too. You won't have any time to breathe without someone else watching your back. On the bright side, there's a ton of items in this tunnel. Every 10 or so feet, you'll find another pile of items. So grab a melee weapon and just start chucking nades. Right before the end of the tunnel, you'll find a table with a full resupply of grenades, health, and ammo. There's also 2 LMGs nearby, but the zombies are still pouring in, so you better grab what you can and go. As you exit the tunnel, a tanker explodes as another tank shows up. If you're playing with friends, this is pretty easy. Just throw a pipe bomb or a bile over there to the right and just run left towards the escape vehicle. If you're playing with bots though, they'll immediately start to backpedal into the tunnel. The bots won't follow you if you try and run for it. They are dead set on killing that tank. But if you do run, you'll find out that the second tank that's supposed to chase you into the helicopter will do so and beat you to death. I have wiped here more than I like to admit. Whenever I play games, I like to go with what the characters would do. If I'm running across the bridge in the Parish, for instance, killing the tank won't stop the bridge from exploding. I just need to leave. Does that mean the Parish almost universally ends with all the bots dead? Maybe. But I feel that's the thematic way to do things. Disclaimer, don't do that online though. Bots don't have feelings, even if they do still flame me in chat. Anyway, so when I get to this point and I see a tank and we're being attacked by 1,000 enemies, it's just another reason that we should leave. You're even supposed to do that with the second tank. It's not between you and the extraction, it's busy killing Francis. Oh, by the way, Francis, he's here, he also dies.
Hell back.
Now that I think about it, I don't think Lewis dies. The last time we see him, he's up on the roof of the hospital. So he's still up there, I guess? This is the only time in the campaign I really felt the difference between the vanilla run and the modded run. The double zombie count makes this tunnel an absolute menace, but I never did die in this tunnel. I exclusively got killed after the tunnel when the bots were too busy fighting a tank. So really it's my own fault for ignoring them. Overall though, this is a pretty solid campaign. Through my 3 playthroughs, I never encountered anything outright broken. There's some graffiti that goes missing between chapter 4 and 5 that the survivors talk about. And there was also this weird platform that pops up a warning about looking like it's gonna break. It does break, not really sure why, but it does. Lockdown also does come with 2 survival maps, but I'm not really a fan of survival, so other than a quick look around, I didn't play them much. But that was Lockdown DLC. There's a sequel out there, and we might get around to it, we'll see. This was originally going to be a different video, but it was taking a bit too long, and after seeing the response to the first video, I really didn't want to keep you guys waiting. So a big heartfelt thanks for that. I really didn't expect it to blow up like it did, just thank you. I've got a ton of other stuff cooking, so stick around. Halloween is just around the corner, and there's nothing quite like a classic source for horror.